right, a few things about some of the lines, just so there's like not confusion and whatnot. In line 12, where you get down here for Milton. Milton's an English writer, British writer, John Milton. So he does both prose and poetry. But making reference to Milton at this point would be like saying, and people read Grisham or Patterson or Sparks or whatnot. It would be a well-known author that most folks are certainly going to know. I'm guessing around line 16, a lot of folks are going, what's going on with the dash, dash, dash whole kind of thing? It's pretty much an insert name, and it wouldn't be that, put in Rick or Leslie or whatever kind of name you want. A lot of writers would be doing this for really a couple hundred years, where usually they didn't want to incriminate themselves. So as opposed to putting down whether it be like a political enemy or someone who they would be criticizing, whether it be royalty or a pope or someone like that, they would just kind of go with the dash, dash, dash. And so a reader would go, okay, I know who you want to put in there, but you're not going to put in, like at this point, King George II would be the king. You're not going to put in his name and then have him come, behead you for treason and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like a hint, hint, wink, wink. You know what name I would put in there, but I'm not going to put the name. With fibs, people have asked, why is fibs in italics? I have absolutely no clue. Point of emphasis doesn't make sense because the use of, and in his writing it's italicized. Point of emphasis doesn't make sense just because it's not really done to emphasize much at that point. I know of no work that would be italicized as a title. I have no clue what it is. My guess is that the dash is political, and so there would be some kind of inside joke that readers at the time would know what's going on. I'm just not privy to what that joke is. We're outside the circle. So if you figure it out, hey, let me know, and then I'll be happy for you. However, there are some names. Ward, who gets mentioned a couple times. Ripley shows up. Those are actual people. Ward, I forget the first name and his position, but he's involved in British government. Pope does not like him. He is not a fan of him. Ripley is an architect. Ripley is a guy who builds bridges. A pile is a nail. So, he's going, who would build a bridge that never drove a nail, that doesn't know how to do it? But if Ripley would disappear, all the world would smile because we wouldn't have to look at his buildings and his bridges anymore. It's an architect that he just has a little bit of a, I don't know why, but there's a vendetta against him a little bit. Rank, because it's not going to be quite as like the king, something like that, as opposed to Ripley doesn't have political ties whatsoever. Ward's like aristocrat, but he's not like prime minister or something like that. Radcliffe, if you go to Oxford and you study to become a doctor, you go to the Radcliffe School of Medicine. So even Radcliffe's doctors travel first to France. Even Radcliffe's doctors go to France first to work on the French people before they come back and work on the British ones. So they kind of learn their trade over there. They make a mistake. It's only a Frenchman. We're not worried. But when they come back and help the British, we know they'll be in pretty good shape. So just a couple little background things with some of them where I think folks kind of understandably might get a little confused as to what it is that he's writing about. How about like the first 4 lines? General idea what's happening? Yeah, and like a normal guy, a person who's trying to do his best. So sober Englishman, and not going, he's not drunk, but someone who is clear-minded, wakes up his servants at 5 o'clock, tries to instruct his family in every rule. Example of this, he sends his wife to church and his son to school. So it's basically day in a life of an English person who is trying to be a good, father / husband. He's trying to do the right thing. What is he trying to do? Well, he's trying to worship like his father's was his care. He's trying to teach frugal virtues to his children, to his heir. He's trying to prove that luxury isn't going to be there all the time. You have to be careful with your money. Put your gold on good security. Doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to have armed guards by it at all time, but it'll be in a safe place where if you need it, you'll be able to get access to it. So it's basically just a typical, regular person. Okay? Nothing fancy. Except you have to get up early, 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Milk the cows, get the eggs, clean your room, spread out the manure, do all that fun stuff. But, what do we get here in line 9? Oh, it didn't highlight. What has happened? Times have changed. So we get a little bit of a shift taking. Now times have changed. Things aren't necessarily the same. Where what are now people thinking about? We have this poetic itch. So poetry, poems. It's not quite yet going they're bad, but poetry, poems are everywhere.
I said they were back.
Oh, back. I'm sorry. I thought you said bad. Who is obsessed with poetry? Well, those who are in the court, those who are in the regular city, those who don't have money, those who do have money. So poetry is everywhere. It's not something that is regulated to simply one class. Sons, sires, and grandsires all will wear the bays. Our wives read Milton, and our daughters plays. Anybody have any idea what he means by will wear the bays? Anyone want to come out here and do their 10th grade Julius Caesar rendition performance, part 2?
I need a goblet, a toga, and a wreath.
I remember it.
Which one did you do?
I didn't pick my own.
I didn't know you get to pick your own.
Well, you could, if you had the option to.
What did you do?
I did, Mark Antony talking to Julius Caesar's body.
Like after everyone has left and all that kind of. Okay.
I did Cassius.
Did you wear the toga?
I did not.
Oh.
I wore the toga and a little goblet.
You wore a toga, goblet, and you said something else.
I did the Act 1 Cassius when he's talking about Caesar. He's like, this is madness. Like, I'm getting up on God.
Anybody wear the leaf crown?
Yeah, I did.
Did you wear it?
Yeah.
That was,
It was extra credit if you wore all these props.
that was hard. That was hard to wear.
The bays is a leaf crown. The leaf crown is made out of
Bays.
bay leaves.
Oh,
Bay leaves are the ones that you.
terrible.
Well, you're not supposed to eat them, but you put them in the sauce for the aroma.
You take them out before you serve
I
them.
know.
Some people
My
do.
mom always misses one and always ends with mine.
When the deal with the bay leaves would be that royalty will wear them, but the other segment of the population that would wear the bay leaves are the artisans. So the musicians, the painters, the sculptors, the poets, Horace, would be wearing bay leaves. So sons, sires, grandsires, all will wear the bays. All will try to be poets. So our wives read Milton and our daughter plays the theaters and rehearsals strong and all our grace at table is a song. No matter where you are, even if you're saying prayers before you eat, it's still in a lyrical, poetic song type fashion. I, who so oft renounce the muses lie, not whoever self ever tells more fibs than I. When sick of muse, our follies we deplore, and promise our best friends to rhyme no more. Why would we promise our friends we're not going to rhyme anymore?
It's an addiction.
This is a fad.
And you're probably not very
Everyone hates your
good
poetry.
at it. And for some reason, Sean, I think of you when I read this line. We promise our friends that we will not rhyme no more. We do these poems all the time, and it gets to the point where we're sick of it, we're tired of it, mostly because they're not any good. But what happens? We wake the next morning in a raging fit and call for a pen and ink to show our wit. We have to go back to it and write some more. So even though we promise our friends not to do this anymore, because it is an addiction, there is an obsession taking place with poetry, we have to come back and write more. So that is something within the blood, it's something within the spirit that is moving us, that we have to come back and write poetry. So Sean, feel free to write some more. Send those Joel Embiid
Mr. King,
gifts and
I try to say bye.
we'll be good.
But it's just a lie. I'm a poet and I know it and I just gotta show it.
Can I please?
Did I tell you my poem about Adam?
No.
Fleas. It's entitled Fleas.
What's it
Adam had 'em.
Good.
Simplicity, it's to the point, it's concise.
called?
Now, if you are going to do something, if you are going to have some kind of skill, he who sets up a shop, what do you have to do first? You have to be an apprentice. You have to go through an apprenticeship. If you are going to be a doctor, we want you to travel to France to work there before you come back here. If you're someone who's going to build a bridge, you have to be able to drive a nail. So there has to be some kind of training in order to be successful. Unless you're Ward or Ripley and he's kind of making fun of you. But those who cannot write and those who can all rhyme and scrawl and scribble to a man. So whether people actually are being trained or not, you still have a contrast here because everyone writes poetry. So you're emphasizing again that idea, and it's not good poetry. Again, there's kind of the satirical criticism taking place that even if a person is not good at it, they still have that obsession, they still have that addiction that they have to go through and try to show off their poetry skills, whether they're good or not so good. So you have a whole bunch of stuff being mentioned here about how poetry, could be kind of bad if folks aren't very good at it. But you have reflect the mischief is not great. These madmen, so the people who are addicted to poetry, they don't hurt the church or the state. That's my misspelling. So poets are harmless. Sometimes the folly benefits mankind, and rarely avarice. Remember, avarice is going to be... It's greed for like material wealth. Rarely avarice taints the tuneful mind. Rarely is a singer, songwriter, poet trying to really be greedy. Allow him but his plaything of a pen. He never rebels or plots like other men. So again, harmless. There's no risk to society. Flight of cashiers or mobs he'll never mind. All knows no losses while the muse is kind. To cheat a friend or Ward he leaves to Peter. Ward would be a person who would do some cheating. The good man heaps up nothing but mere meter. Enjoy his garden and his book in quiet, and then a perfect hermit in his diet. So there is no disruption to anyone. Leave them alone. Let them do their thing. Even if their skill's not very good, they're not going to cause any problems. What's he actually do in the last stanza? Because it's not picking on people for how bad they are.
It's like, well, first, some people say that poetry is useless because you can just write normally.
Yeah, you could do it. You could write in prose.
Then you have to
So he kind of throws out the idea: could poetry be useless? Byron, I missed your last part that you said.
But then he sort of applies, gives an answer.
Okay, so where you have this line here of what will a child learn sooner than a song? Think about nursery rhymes, songs, little prayers. It could be a way for them to increase their memory, their skill, their knowledge about something. What better teach a foreigner the tongue? And you think about this is even true for people coming to countries today. How do you learn the language? A lot of folks listen to radio, songs to pick up on slang and things like that. So there is still usefulness to poetry, even if some folks go, you don't need to write in poetry, you could just write in prose. He's still looking at what some serious benefits to poetry would actually be. What's long or short, each accent where to place, and speak in public with some sort of grace. So if you become practiced and learned at reading poetry, you might even be able to kind of talk better to people. And then do your Julius Caesar toga, bay leaf wearing performances and get some bonus points. I scarce can think him such a worthless thing unless he praise some monster of a king. There he is kind of making a little bit more of a direct reference to George II. Why would you want to praise him? Or virtue or religion turn to sport to please a lewd or unbelieving court. As long as you're not doing any of those things at the bottom, poetry is perfectly harmless. There's nothing wrong with it. It's simply a poem about poets. I don't know if Lindsay's going to come out on Thursday going, those questions are a piece of cake just like the last time, or it seems so much easier. But if you're aware that he's writing about poetry, I think things will kind of start to fall into place and we'll be okay. If you understand what you read, those multiple choice questions just seem so much easier to answer. Not to say there might not be some questions that could still be kind of a little bit of a struggle. You're not going to have a thing about like line 16, the dash, 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 most likely, is meant to represent specific people. You wouldn't have anything like that. All right. Any questions? It's an older one, but still very doable, still accessible. Tomorrow, you'll be breaking up into groups. We'll do group scoring for synthesis. So you get the synthesis tomorrow, score them in class. That'll kind of be your homework to finish it off as need be. And then you'll get the scores on Thursday after we do your poetry quiz. Otherwise, you're reading through chapter 15 for Friday. All right? Through chapter 15.